Hello and welcome to On Second Thought with Mike and Luke, an ongoing conversation about ideas and current events in which we explore the underlying connections and root causes that help us discover what is really true and can even help reshape the focus of our lives. Today we're going to talk about the end of Fox News. And
you sound robust today.
Yes, this is my radio voice.
I was wondering about that. There's a slight different tone.
When you're doing the intro, you got to make it sound good, right? Okay,
I agree.
It's been a couple of weeks, tumultuous couple of weeks. We sort of are trying to get our groove here, but it's been a struggle the last month for our lives. But so it goes. We're back, and we got things to talk about.
Yeah, some things have accumulated, huh? The most recent one is Tucker Carlson. There's a few pieces, right? The Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson's the big headline. He's the headliner, the number one personality at Fox News.
At least that's the shocker for everybody, because I think the Dominion one's a shocker, personally.
Okay, explain that one.
Well, so the Dominion one is they're being sued because they had interviews. Well, I won't get too far into it, but
Fox News is being sued.
Fox News was being sued by the Dominion voting systems. Mm-hmm. And there's been plenty internal evidence that something has been wrong with them. And of course, my part of my story is in 2020, I go to bed thinking Trump has won this second term. Mm-hmm. And I get up the next morning, and 100,000 votes magically have appeared.
Yeah.
in
the four key areas of four swing states.
And then you start looking for the things that are why, and there's a whole host of pieces of evidence, let's call them. Mm-hmm. And one of them is these voting machines, and they were hacked, the algorithms were hacked, and there's enough there to have warranted an accusation. So it got on, especially Fox News, and they were sued for defamation, which is incredibly hard to prove. Right? Because you have to have malice of intent.
They didn't prove it. They simply settled the lawsuit.
It never happens. It usually isn't provable. So the shock of it is they settled.
Yeah.
And so everybody's surprised, and of course the left is all C, and da-da. But my thinking is there's something more going on here. I think the settling, there's something else happening there with the settling.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of changes in media in the last couple of weeks. To me, it feels like the media companies realize that this is the lull before the next presidential campaign.
Oh, that could be.
And they need to get their lineups situated. But the idea of letting Tucker Carlson go, who's the most popular commentator on cable news,
Babylon
of any
Bee's
channel.
Spoof meme on it was, Fox News lets go of the only reason most people watch Fox News.
Yeah.
Or the primary reason.
Well, and last week, Dan Bongino stepped out of Fox News as well. So that's a big...
Now, he said publicly, don't read anything into it.
Bongino did.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, okay, I'll hear you on that. Nevertheless, when you have a string of things together, you think, what's going on?
Right. So I saw a clip from Bill O'Reilly, who left Fox News, I don't know, several years ago.
There was a smidgen of scandal.
Bit of a cloud.
Yeah.
His commentary about it was from insiders, he claims, at Fox News, that it was a total surprise. His commentary
about Tucker Carlson.
Tucker. Yeah. And that they walked in Monday during show prep and said, you're done. And the whole staff was let go at the same time. He also was talking about, so there was a 60 Minutes article on Sunday night about Ray Epps and how Tucker Carlson ruined his life.
Yeah.
And so there was this thought of, we'll expect more lawsuits, and Fox
News
is already
So we're trying to talk to each other, but we have to say, I can imagine people listening in, Ray Epps, who's Ray Epps? Yeah. So you got to give the 15-second.
Okay. So January 6th, there's crowds of people, and even the day before, so January 5th, there were several rallies, and we walked around them. Most of them were just the same, political pundits getting up on stages, cheering, getting everybody riled up. So there's video, though, of the crowd and of people. And
from all kinds of angles.
From all over. And so after it all went sideways and the riots
Whatever happened.
Going into the Capitol, people started poring over all this footage and came upon several different people with video of this same guy telling people, tomorrow we're going in the Capitol. And that he was like in the crowd at the front where the pushing with the police was just beginning, which was actually during the Trump rally. Before the rally was even over, there there was some of the crowd already headed to the Capitol and interacting and pushing back against police barriers. The police were unprepared. There was just a handful of them there. But there's Ray Epps, this guy, and he's an older gentleman. He's speaking to these younger guys, and then they turn and push against the cops. So you see this instigation.
Yeah.
You even see the crowd resisting him, saying no when he's saying, we're going to go in the Capitol. And they're like, he's a Fed, right? Which is what Republicans like to say whenever anybody's trying to instigate illegal activity.
And that's not just happening around him. That's happening in multiple places. There's this idea, people have the suspicion that there's plants.
Feds in the chat rooms. Yeah. And you see that with like the supposed conspiracy to kidnap the Michigan governor.
That's right.
And there were 16 guys involved, but like 14 of them were Feds, right? Were paid informants.
It was a setup.
Yeah. So
Julie Kelly, by the way, if you want to read more about this, Julie Kelly has been a great reporter. American Greatness is where she writes, but the January 6th in particular. Slowly unfolding the federal government's involvement in that at multiple levels, more people, but Ray Epps is the face of that, is what happened.
Yeah, so what happened then, after January 6th, when tons of people are arrested, this footage comes out, and the question is, how come he didn't get arrested? And not only did he not get arrested, he actually went behind closed doors and testified to the Democrat investigation. I don't know if it was the
J6 count.
If it was the council that was trying to impeach Trump at the time for all of it, but it was kind of like, or if it was after the fact. But there's been multiple opportunities where they could say, well, this guy was actually instigating the things that you're calling an insurrection. What's the deal?
And when you're saying people were looking at things, what you're meaning is because most of the video that's formal has been kept under wraps. But there's so many people with phones. So
and who did it get given to when the Republicans took control of the House?
Okay, so I was just going to make
Carlson,
that statement is that the first Ray Epps development is people looking at phones and videos that can't or haven't been taken away.
Right.
So then when they take back the House and they release all this January 6th footage, because I think this hasn't been an honest panel.
Yeah.
So they give it to Tucker Carlson and angering all the other media outlets, right? First of all, for giving it. Then second of all, for not giving it to them.
To them, yeah.
So he comes out, and there's even more then, and Ray Epps even takes a larger, and several other people begin to be identified, but he becomes the poster boy.
Well, and he already was. A lot of what I saw come out of the Tucker footage that he went through, because it wasn't people's cell phone footage. It was the security cameras inside the Capitol.
That's right.
Yeah. And so a lot of that was around the shaman.
Well, that's what he showed.
Captain Caveman, right?
That's right. Yeah. But it had an effect. And here's the other thing that was chilling about that is there was pushback. It was embarrassing. And there was some other things about people that said got killed that didn't get killed. And
police officer.
Yeah, the police officer, yeah. So Tucker Carlson, for all that thing in weeks, I think he had it 2 weeks they went over it. Then they start with that lead thing, and then they didn't do it anymore.
Because they never followed up.
They never followed up. And partly, Schumer, the Senate leader, had given a verbal warning to Murdoch. He said, you need to shut Tucker Carlson down. It just
Chuck
so happens,
Schumer is the leading Democrat in the Senate.
That's right.
Yeah. And AOC this last week was calling for Tucker to be removed as well. And she was gloating
So
on
I
her
think
social
that
media yesterday.
your Ray Epps thing on the Sunday night, it's not an accident, and it's the only January 6th footage thing that he really did, minus that little piece about the guy who supposedly died. And that's all that's been brought forth. And so you get the sense that there's been overlord management at Fox.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's been going around since the 2020 election when Fox was calling Arizona.
I stopped watching Fox that night. Yeah. I was so angered by how they were handling it. So I watched them because the other people are slanted.
Right.
And I don't mind if they have, they had different commentators that I don't always agree with, but I feel like Fair and Balanced, funny enough, I felt like they achieved that in a sense, but not that election.
Yeah.
And it angered me. I've not watched them since. Yeah. I've not watched Fox since.
Well, their stock price is going down. I assume I saw that. A lot of their leading voices on the real, what I hear Republicans use the term America First conservatives.
Yeah.
Which I think is different than, have you ever heard the term the GAE, the Global American Empire?
No.
Well, that's often when you think about McCain or even, sometimes they get called neocons, right?
Yeah.
But the neocon, meaning conservatives in the 90s, like Bush Sr. and George W., who thought we're gonna take America and
Yeah.
bring democracy, to
yeah.
Iraq or to Libya or whatever. But really, you're just bringing chaos and death. And the idea is that the neocons were the ones who said, well, we'll keep this forever war going. And McCain
Yeah.
was on that boat too.
Well, I looked at it as an insider and outsider, and now we use the word elites. But neocons, in that sense, I know where you're coming from with that. But I looked at it as this: when you're on the inside of government now, at least,
Yeah,
you make a lot of money, and war is a moneymaker.
you bet.
And oil becomes a part of that. And the Bushes, sadly to say, have been a part of that. And that was McCain too. The industry of war is big money.
Yeah.
And it makes an insiders protect. So they actually want war. They want these things to take place, but you can't campaign on them
Right.
because most people don't, which I think made Trump such an anomaly for all the whatever you want to call bombastic about Trump or what you don't like about him. I like the word bombastic because it's a fair word and it doesn't have too many more negatives. It's just its own word. And I think Teddy Roosevelt was bombastic.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not unfair to say there are people like that and you just have to deal with it. But he still was fair. He didn't want to have war if we don't have to. And I think that
Yeah.
was a good thing.
Right.
And he rattled the saber. We could have gone to war with probably North Korea as a proxy for China. And it was his, and same with Iran. And it was his threats of saber rattling that kind of forestalled that, I think. I think we're closer to war now, interestingly, for you and I we've not grown up with war.
Right.
Our parents were a part of Vietnam and knew the world. They were kids with World War II.
Yeah.
So we're the first ones, and all below us, they have, I mean, there's been the Afghan stuff, right, and whatnot.
Well, that is the trick, though, is we've been at war since 2001.
I know.
I mean, in
Well,
Afghanistan, then
yeah,
in Iraq,
that's
then
right.
in Libya, we've been
I
at
know.
war.
But it's not the same
it's
kind.
so isolated because there's no draft.
That's right.
It's a much more technological.
More like Korea, where it was technically, the old people will say Korea was not a war. It was called an incident.
Right.
Because Congress has to
Well,
authorize
that's
a
Vietnam
war.
too.
Yeah. Well, Vietnam had a declaration of Congress at one point. So
Did it? Because
think
I always
so.
heard it to be called the same thing, the police action or something like that.
I might be wrong on that. So interesting side mark on being wrong.
Yeah.
We're starting to get comments from people. I don't know if they show up online, but I've been told to me personally about things that we get wrong. It's like, oh, well, I go.
That's what happens when you talk on the internet, right?
Yeah. What's like a Victor Davis? I was saying David.
Oh, right.
And I've had several people, because you said, I think it's Davis, and it was Davis. And so I've been reminded of
Someone
that
has been
several
giving you a
times.
hard
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Well.
But I figure it's partly compliment.
All right,
anyway-
so you wanted to talk about the lowest rung. What's the lowest rung that
Moving us up.
civilization can
Hey,
go?
wait, I want to make a prediction.
Okay, all right.
Okay, one more thing on Dominion. I think we're going to find out something shady is happening.
How would we find this out? Tell me
I don't
more.
know how.
You just think it's coming.
I think that I think the Murdoch family gave away almost $800 million for some reason. They didn't have to, and they wouldn't have lost. So why'd they do it? They're getting something.
Right.
What is it? And I don't think we know yet. But they're getting something. They're paying for something.
So the respectable conservatives, right, which is a bigger group than the Chamber of Commerce conservatives who just want the businesses to grow, or the global American empire people. There's a lot of conservatives, Christians included, evangelicals, who just want to vote for the respectable guy. And Trump is not that.
I know.
And DeSantis is.
I know.
And you see already Fox is lining up behind DeSantis.
I know.
And so I think Tucker's been a Trump guy.
On air,
Yeah.
he's been supportive, because part of the thing with the Dominion stuff is emails came out that he does not like Trump. He personally does
Interesting.
not like Trump at all. In fact, what came out in the emails is he did not believe Dominion's systems.
Wait, what emails were these?
These were private emails that were a part of the discovery of the lawsuit with Dominion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so there's emails, they're out now, to Laura Ingraham. He's typing, and he doesn't believe the Dominion systems are rigged, and that's what threw the election. He's not saying he doesn't think that there was not fraudulent activity, but he doesn't believe
think it's that.
But just because he had people on his show that did, he thought he was acting as a journalist to get people's ideas.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily agree with it, which is interesting.
Well, so this is part of the problem, is that journalism is dead.
I agree
And
with
so
you.
the only journalism that we're getting is through commentators. Do you know what I'm saying? Because the idea of fair and balanced, we've all given up on it. And so we want to hear our facts filtered through people who share our worldview, which I
Yeah.
think is reasonable.
Except for,
But it sets us up for one-sided
you're right,
information.
echo chambers.
Yeah.
But what do you think, though, about what Elon Musk did and Matt Taibbi and others like him? Glenn Greenwald. Taibbi and Greenwald are both people I do not agree with,
Yeah.
but I appreciate what they're doing.
Taibbi.
Taibbi. I had an H in there.
I want to get the David Hansen comments.
David Hansen.
Davis Hansen.
But I think actually they're doing journalism. I don't agree with their
I
worldview.
100% do, but as soon as they come out against the fascist left,
I know.
they are deemed conservative.
I know.
They're
I
immediately
know,
branched.
which is
So then it's just
dumb. They're not
isolates them
conservative.
into an echo chamber.
But do you have the feeling that there's a little bit of tide shift that's happened over the last, I'll just say, bit of time?
You're just
months?
saying in the culture war.
In this war,
Yeah.
there seems to be something good taking place. It's not victory. It's almost, I don't know. I feel like there's a tide shift. Do you feel that at all? I'm curious.
I do and I don't. And part of it is that, and this is the nature, I think, of conservatism. Conservatives are used to being in the institutions, running things.
Yeah.
And like the crazies are doing art, or they're in Hollywood or whatever. And then we who manage.
Yeah, I don't think institutions have been taken back.
No,
at all.
and so in the same way, elections aren't turning our way.
Right.
So I think there's a narrative, but here's the hard thing. Let's say that sense of we're winning is only in our echo chamber. Like in the times when I go interact with people that are not in the conservative world, they have no sense of our winning anything.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking Florida, North Dakota just did 6 weeks banning
6-week
abortion.
ban. Yeah.
Yep.
Florida did too.
TikTok has been banned several states now because it's a corrupt Chinese gateway to
Wait, so the
spying
state are actually successful at saying no TikTok?
on any state machines. Yeah, there's
But
been
isn't
like
that
6
within
of
the
them.
state government?
That's only within the state. It's not federally.
No. What I'm saying is it everybody's phone, or is it just
No,
saying
just
that
state
if,
phones. If you work for the
Yeah,
state,
right? You can't
and
have
the-
TikTok,
You can't have TikTok on
which is
this
a
stuff.
pretty limited restriction.
It is, but it's still driving people bananas.
Which is
Right?
crazy. Like that means that
Yeah.
who actually has a state phone? I mean, like
It's
teachers don't have
almost
state
like
phones.
it's symbolic more than effective.
Right. It's
But
just
the
saying that's our
symbolism is
territory.
causing gnashing of teeth.
Okay, so this brings up a topic that I was discovering recently, because I assumed, there's the libs of TikTok is a pretty well-known
Right.
Twitter personality, and she posts clips of crazy liberals talking about transgenderizing kids
With
and all
very
this.
little comment,
Yeah, no, right.
but it's their own words letting them indict themselves.
No, man. But what I've concluded, and I found out I was in error, was that TikTok was the place where they're proselytizing kids. And don't get me wrong, it is. There's a ton of leftist propaganda on there. But it's not actually, like, if you look at where does the mind virus that is the transgender concept,
Yeah.
right? Where does it get hold of kids? In what app, in what format? Because we've been saying, oh, it's teachers. It's at school. And there is some of that, but it's not as much as you think. It's and so then I thought, oh, it must be on TikTok. But it isn't even as much that. It's Discord. And I don't know if you've heard of Discord.
Never heard of it.
So it's
Other
an
than
old,
the adjective.
Yeah, well, it's named appropriately.
Yep.
But it's like the old chat rooms of the 90s. But if you have the app, you can create your own chat room, and they call it
Yeah.
a server, right?
Yeah.
But you're posting text and video, and my kids get on there and trade memes with each other. But what they've all said is they always get kicked out of these servers that are really big if they say anything against the promotion of homosexuality, against transgenderism being great, if you're not on board with it. And then what I've just started reading was, because Discord, the kids I've met interacting with middle and high schoolers who are really into Discord are also into internet culture, gaming, anime, all the sort of kind of socially awkward things. Well, those socially awkward kids are also the most susceptible to transgender ideology.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe a shift. We'll see. You were gonna take us to another topic. And I
Well,
said
you
one
were
more
talking about the
comment.
lowest rung. We mentioned in our
lowest rung,
last
transgender.
episode.
Okay.
How low can society fall?
I made the comment
Yeah.
that how worse, that this is a low point. You said, well, there's lots more low points.
Right.
So I thought, okay, that's true. But I started to think about it, and I wanted to offer a pushback on it. I would agree that there are, in a sense, more traumatic things that can happen. Okay?
Yeah.
So I put in my notes, like, if you're martyred and killed because you believe something, whether it's for Christian things or who knows what else.
Okay.
I mean, in a sense, you could say there's nothing worse than you're killed. I mean, what else is worse than that, right? But that's not all the way true, because part of one of Jesus' comments is, look, they can only kill your body.
Right.
So there's this division of ideas that there are bad things from one perspective, but there can be bad things from another perspective, and it's like the criterias make for what is worse. And so that got me thinking about your comment, because you had mentioned like sex slavery or there was a nation that just okayed sex with minors. I don't remember. It was a European
It was
country.
the United Nations. United Nations
Was
is
it the United
proposing
Nations? Oh, that's what it
that
was.
they should legalize sex with minors,
Yes.
including prostitution.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what you're talking about. And in
Yeah.
a sense, that was your argument. And I can understand that being worse in a sense. However, I think there's a point to be made that it's not worse, that what transgenderism is unique in this. And so I'll just present it and you can respond to it.
Yeah.
But the idea being that it is fundamentally saying God can have zero impact on if you're male or female. I don't care.
Well,
if
or on who you are at all.
Yeah, on who you are
Right.
really. I don't care that every cell in the human body is either male or female. That
Right.
structure is there. But the absolute rejection of God's providential thing in that, I get to create myself. And if hopefully we'll get to the woke conversation, but self-creation is a rejection of God. And I was thinking about this, there's no more fundamental rejection that can be made.
Right.
And the kicker is you don't die. It is a death to the soul that's taking place. It is an assault on the interior of yourself.
Right.
And it's self-assault. But now it's being forced upon others. Join with this self-assault where we will slay the insides of people.
Okay. So
And I was thinking that's kind of like a worse.
part of it is and part of it isn't. So I agree with you in the sense that I always think of it in terms of my kids, right? I have a fair amount of confidence in my own ability to resist gender ideology or leftist theory in general, okay? But I want to protect or keep watch over my sons and see that what they're believing, right? So when you were describing that, though, and talking about martyrdom, I grew up and have recently even looked closely at stories of missionaries in Muslim countries or in the Soviet Union when it existed, being tortured in front of their families or having their families tortured in front of them
Yeah.
in order to just say, you're going to do this till you renounce,
That's right.
and that feels like the worst. But even that wouldn't be as bad as my kids joining, and you know what I'm saying, like giving up, giving in, getting co-opted into it.
There's a sense that it's worse, but there's a sense that the other one destroys from the inside. And you partner
it's
with
another
it.
level.
Yeah, that's why I reconsidered, and I thought, well, I do still think there's something about transgenderism. I think that as bottoms out,
Right.
and it doesn't mean. I would take your point by saying this. It doesn't mean there aren't evils that are more and can even execute more painfulness in a given moment.
Right.
But there's something about this that seems. What else is there left to destroy if you destroy the inside of a person?
But all of this is still within the context of a functional society.
Yes.
So here's what I mean by that, right?
I agree with
The
you.
lowest rung is really when there is no
Okay.
society remaining,
Yes.
and people come and say, I want your wife, and they just take her, right? I
Yes.
want your possessions, and I have the guns. And so
Yeah.
there is a lower rung. I was hearing somebody talk about in the regions.
You're talking anarchy.
Well, for example, in the areas of like Ukraine when they were starving under Soviet rule.
Yeah.
The Soviets made propaganda just saying it's not right to eat your children, right? And there was a story of this man, and he had fallen in love with this girl, and they were trying to survive this.
Yeah.
And he had to go away. He had to leave town to go do something. And he charged his friend to keep an eye out on her. And the friend failed. And a mob of men just came and cut her to pieces. Right? And starvation doesn't just make you sick and make you sad and make you tired. It makes you crazy.
Bestial.
Yeah. And so there's levels of darkness that we take for granted, that our society and civilization as a whole will just keep that back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, even if you look at some of what's going on in the streets of major cities, especially on the West Coast, with what homeless people are going through, with the drugs and selling themselves and all these things, it gets to that place
living
of
like
darkness.
animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's another way to say it. Living like, yes, there's a degradation of living like animals. That's a loss of humanity also.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a destruction of the soul.
Yeah.
Like you were saying.
And maybe what the other one is, maybe what makes it feel bad, because I still feel like there's something there, is maybe it's the living of it's a destruction of the soul, but it still has the veneer of not animal behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
It still pretends to be virtuous.
I feel like what you're describing is the darkness at its seductive beginning. You can be like God. Whereas the man on the street who's prostituting himself so he can get fentanyl every day and slowly destroying himself, he's at the end of the same journey, right? And that's what breaks my heart. I see stories and testimonies right now from 25-year-olds who, when they were teenagers, struggled with transgender, right, body dysmorphia, and then were told by the adults in their life, if you don't get surgeries, if you don't take hormones, you will kill yourself. You must do this.
Yeah.
And then the parents were then persuaded by doctors and counselors of the same fact. So the parents were like, we don't want this. And they were told, you can have a dead daughter or a live son. You have to do, and it's all a lie.
Yeah.
And so now you have these 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, women who've had the double mastectomy, who have this deep, painful voice, whose vocal cords are aching, whose joints are destroyed by the hormones and the chemicals that we've been...
Okay, let me ask you a question on one of the points you made. I don't know what episode. You had LGBT without the T.
Without the T.
Right?
Yeah.
And we had that conversation. I thought that was an interesting and profitable one. If I asked you this, because T is destroying that movement. The T part is what's destroying it.
Right. Well, the goal of the movement is to destroy. I think, for example, the Bud Light thing, right? Bud Light is getting destroyed right now because the conservatives are saying, we're done with you if you're going to put that madman who pretends to be a 10-year-old girl on here. Yeah. So, but it's not as if the left is saying, oh, no, we lost Bud Light. Bud Light is an American brand.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
And so part of it, their goal is just to destroy anything that's identifiable as American.
Yes, that's true. But it's not true for all of LG and B. Because, and that was the point you were making, is some of them are saying, this is not what we were fighting for.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the same thing with feminism. And we'll just call it a feminism further than I would be comfortable with. A lot of them are saying, and I think, what's her name, the author, Harry Potter lady, is the pinnacle of that, saying, this is destroying women. And then you have it come up in conservative circles, Riley, the swimmer, and other things. This is, in states, or some states are passing, you can't compete, and some are saying you can. And so it's working a destruction either at a level that was not expected, or at a pace that was not expected, or I'm not sure what. Right? So this was first your point. Here was my question. Would any of those other things that you mentioned, let's say the starvation and the eating and the fentanyl and any of those other crises, would LGB feel like they're destroying them by supporting that?
I guess I'm not quite sure what you're saying.
So LGB, there is a group of LGBT that are feeling like transgenderism is doing something, is destroying what we fought for.
Yeah. Or sexualizing kids, right? Yeah.
There's for a lot of reasons, but it's because it's calling dark light and light dark. It's flipping everything upside down.
Yeah.
And it's insanity is what's happening. There's no reasonableness in it. Reason is gone when you can say that as a man you can have a baby. That's not reasonable.
Right.
It's A does not equal B, right? It's anyway. Would they say the same thing about the fentanyl destruction? What you were saying was the end of the slide. Would they say the same things, that those things are destroying what we're fighting for?
So here, I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but what I think is that what we're seeing is the end, right? We're seeing that destruction go all the way to kids, right? So, but LGB, the 90s, right? The gay 90s is what they were saying when I was in high school, was the beginning. It was, you can redefine marriage, you can redefine society. It's up to you. Do as you will. And there's no slippery slope. Don't worry. We just want marriage. We just want to be left alone to live our lives.
And that wasn't entirely true with everybody, but it was for some.
No, what I think is that, and this is true of every political movement, is it's driven by the radical element. The activists within the movement drive it forward. And then behind the activists are the reasonable folks who say, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, they're fighting for me. I
agree with you there. The impulse to destroy is unstoppable. Once you let that out, you can't stop it. And it's harder to build something up than it is just tear something down.
It reminds me of a riot.
Yes.
So in a riot, people do things they can't imagine they would normally have done. And it becomes very base.
Yeah.
It becomes very animalistic. I once talked to a police officer who had to work riots, and he said there's these really weird elements that's like people become cavemen. Like they want fire.
There is
and
such
they want
a thing
rocks.
as a mob.
But it's not just a mob. It's like they become cavemen.
Yeah.
He was describing it as like they grunt and they hit rocks together and they scream. It's like they lose their minds. And it's sort of like the whole culture is heading in that way at its fringe. But again, what's hard is you look to your neighbor, you look to your friend, you look to someone, your colleague who might be same-sex attracted, who might be in a relationship, right? Who's got a stable life and is holding a job, and there's no chaos there.
Yeah.
They've just gone this other direction. They believe something different, and you say that's not animalistic, right?
Right.
But then you go to the news and you see the fringe, and you think, well, maybe that's just the news. Turn the news off. But the problem is, the news is talking about who's ascending in power, who's controlling the institutions and the policies and the budgets. And man, there's so much power in budgets and
corporations. Yeah, the Bud Light thing's an interesting thing because it's like, oh, they went too far. And you know what's intriguing to me about it? Intriguing is a poor choice of words because it's not fun to watch. But what I'm interested to see is, because I came to the conclusion some time ago that Hollywood, for example, I remember when The Passion of the Christ came out.
Yeah.
Huge moneymaker. And I remember coming to the conclusion, money is not the only thing they care about. Now, they do care about money, but they're willing to spend money and lose money to destroy.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Right? So I'm wondering to myself, Bud Light, I wonder if they want to make money, if they regret. Now, there's ads coming out. Have you seen any of the manly ads?
I don't watch TV.
Well, it comes on even if you're streaming something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm not
they
their
went
demographic.
Out and bought. Maybe I am. I don't know. But, I mean, there is a backpedaling. And so you wonder, I'm just curious to see, will it be money backpedaling because it's going to hit them, or do they just doing it, but they don't really care,
Well, I think the element within the corporations are true believers, right? So the marketing people, the HR people, whoever it is
But that marketing lady is on leave now, and her boss is on leave now.
Well,
too.
it seems like it's becoming a big win for conservatives.
But it's a win out of no strategy. It's just shock and disgust.
Well, but what it's showing, I think, because conservatives have been shocked and disgusted forever.
I know.
Right?
I know.
But it never catches on.
I know it.
And so what you're seeing is a growing number of people who are going to these school board meetings and saying, you don't get to do this to my kids.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, and maybe that's what you were talking about earlier, is there's a wave growing, a critical mass.
I think so. Okay, I wonder, I'm hesitant to say the next thing, but it's a question I have for you.
Okay.
But it's very vulnerable because it exposes to being attacked, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But I'm going to say it anyway. You can tell me, well, it's going to get recorded. You can tell me if you didn't think it was wise or not. Okay. I have a theory about something about the transgender thing. And I came to it looking at the Bud Light thing, right?
Okay.
What's his name?
Dylan Mulvaney.
Yes, that one. Just the way she appears, he appears, she appears as she. What I began to think to myself was, what's insidious about this is this. As trying to put makeup on and be a girl, and in this case, a young girl with the kind of way she smiles and the way I know. So this is part of the difficulty. But what it's doing, and here's what I find. When I scroll through feeds, I'm looking at some things. I want to see if anything's happened. I will go past those pictures quickly.
Yes.
I don't want to see them.
Right.
And I ask myself why. And here's my theory.
Okay.
Because as a man, a woman is an attractive thing.
Right.
And now I don't want to be unfaithful to my wife, but I don't think it's wrong to look at women and say, she's very nice looking. Right? Okay, yeah. So I think there's an okayness there. I don't want a man making me think that about them.
Right. It's a perversion.
It is a perversion, and it's like they crossed a boundary, and they're trying to force me to do something and feel something that's like it can start to anger me.
Well, so this is part of...
They're messing with the normal biology of attraction.
Yeah.
For men, it's important. And I'm not saying it's not important for women, and that's why this is
but it's different.
It's different.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's an assault on...
To me, that's the definition of perversion, right? To take something good and corrupt it.
Yeah.
They're trying to take something good and natural.
Well, that's where I wanted to go, but I thought, if that's what they're really doing, they have far more lofty goals than I was giving credit for. Because that's I didn't always think this thought until it's becoming more and more and more. And then it's in more and more pictures, more and more people, and it's always men.
Yeah.
And more, and they dress up nicely. And the interesting thing is, I never had this reaction to Bruce Jenner becoming Caitlyn Jenner.
Okay.
Because I also didn't feel like he was trying to force me to do something. I thought he had a real struggle. I didn't agree with the steps he took, but I thought he had a years-long struggle, right? And I actually viewed him with some sympathy for the difficulty, even if I disagreed with the steps he took.
Right.
I didn't feel like he was trying to push me into something, right? I didn't feel he was trying to entice me.
So when he was winning Woman of the Year and all these accolades as a hero, you felt like that was the world at large putting that on him, not him seeking that out?
Not necessarily, no. I don't know that he sought that out. I think I read the interview where he talked about having these feelings before he ever won the decathlon.
Right.
And that he did his athletic endeavors to feel more masculine.
Right.
So when I read that, I had a real sense of sympathy for him as an individual. I think there are people who have legitimate transgender. They have gender dysphoria in a very legitimate way. I think what you said earlier with the mind virus. So what's the difference
between him and a 12-year-old who says, I think I'm the opposite sex?
Because the 12-year-old has no capacity to evaluate that. Their brain is still developing. They have no clue. And you can see kids. So we had 3 boys, 2 girls, and they played with each other. And there was times you could see boy things and girl things. You could see 2 little ones playing, and there's dolls, and there's camo men.
Yeah.
And the one is wanting to build a house, and the boy will build the house with her.
Sure.
No, he doesn't mind doing that. He also wants to destroy the house. And she might huff and puff, but she doesn't. In other words, the boyness came out and the girlness came out.
Okay.
But there's also a season in which they don't know what that means.
Right.
And
they
he's
certainly
okay
don't
doing
see
the girlness.
what consequences
and
have
she's
come of any
okay
of that.
doing the boyness. And so for them to take a 12-year-old or any, I agree with what Florida did with, you can't do this until 18.
Right.
A person has to have, I think 18 is too young. I think you still I think your mid-20s is when you finally begin to settle in some things about yourself. But it's not right to say a kid has the capacity to make that judgment. And I think Bruce Jenner waited a long time to do it.
Well, yeah. What's interesting is you see, and I don't know if this is true or not. It's simply my observation. I don't have a big sample size except the things I see. It seems like among transgender people, the men saying they're women have this hunger for attention on a level that's not the same for women
I
saying
think you're
they're
right.
men.
I think you're completely right on that.
It's either that or that there's something in the culture that wants to elevate the men dressing as women and changing themselves. There's some, and maybe it's to do with what you're saying, that kind of weirdly seductive twist to what they're doing, like the drag queens. And it also is almost exclusively men who abuse kids sexually, right? And you think, okay, well, why does this dude want to dress provocatively and then sit in front of little kids? Like, what's the appeal to that?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I don't know how fruitful it is to try to explain it. Do you know what I'm saying? Part of it in me is just saying, I just am wanting to make sense of the world.
Yes.
Right. And that's valuable.
It is. I think it is valuable.
I feel like I remember as a kid, right? My dad just saying when homosexuality was beginning to appear in pop culture, right? When Ellen was on her show or some of these early adopters. And my dad would just make these flippant comments like, just get rid of all of them, or something like that. Like he just, and I begin to feel that, now I'm his age.
Yeah.
And I think, man, why are we, like, what would the Bible say about it? Because if the Bible were in charge, and this is sort of like, we could get into Christian nationalism again. I think we've talked about that before.
Not
but
enough.
The idea
of
well, why would we let adults do this? If it's a lie, if they're living a lie, and it's not just a lie, it's a self-destructive, degrading, culturally demeaning, right? Why would we say 18 is the limit? Why wouldn't we block it for everybody?
Yeah. We should plan sometime to have a larger discussion on Christian nationalism and whatnot, because I think it would be profitable even for you and I to bang some ideas off each other, but it would be interesting, I think, to listen to. But I agree that it's knowing more. Understanding is never a bad thing, and yet I have a friend who says, this is Francis Chan says this. One of the things I like about him, he goes, when it tells you to do something, you do it.
Right.
That's it. I mean,
hear and obey.
It can be, hear and obey. So if you're told to go visit people in prison, you don't need to spend time understanding why they're in prison or how hard it must be, especially if you don't go. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the dilemma of understanding, and it's something that I've struggled with. So, okay. Can we go on to another one?
Yeah, what do you got?
I was going to ask about woke, unless you wanted to do something from your list there, because we kind of talked. We've shared these topics so far, but
I have one on my list about can the left meme. Right?
Let's do that then.
And this is a joke that I hear conservatives make. Left can't meme, and what they mean is there's a form of memeing. Those maybe some of you don't know what a meme is. It started out as just a picture with words on it, and usually it made a joke. And then there would be these pictures with an expression of a pop culture, someone in pop culture.
Did you think I was going to agree when you asked me that the other day in your kitchen?
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But so I disagree with the statement the left cannot meme. I think the left can't take a joke.
Yeah.
Right? It's anyone who's purely seeking power.
I think the left can't meme. And
you said
disagree.
They can't.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I termed it in memes as only funny things, then you would agree. But if you expand the idea of memeing, then you say, no, they're better at it.
Well, so the definition of a meme or another, maybe a better way is like an archetype or an icon that you create.
Taking a picture.
You create an idea that pervades culture at a level that pops up like Easter eggs in a movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're making a reference there. Like the three Spider-Man pointing at each other. That's a meme, right? And they literally made it in the Spider-Man movie when they redid it recently. How many Spider-Man movies are there? Maybe Spider-Man is a meme, right? So by himself. But this idea of who's better at creating a cultural image that sticks, and I think the left is by far better at it.
So when you conflate memes with a cultural image, which they do participate in that,
Yeah.
then under that,
Versus
I
the
agree
chat
with
room
you then.
exchange of humorous
Yes.
pictures and videos.
I agree with you but I think you've also elevated meme, not necessarily elevated wrongly, but you've expanded it to this idea of a spirit of the age symbol.
Well,
And that's run by the left. That is the left.
that, yes. But the other side of that too is that there's a priority there, and that the conservatives think we mocked Hillary online, and that made Trump win. And it's like, they think
Yeah.
that their mockery, their memes, their jokes are a strategy to shift the cultural narrative.
Yes.
But it's nothing compared to all of
I'm
television,
glad you
all
said
of
it that
movies,
way
all of
compared
music.
to, because it is something, but you're right, it's limited.
Yeah.
And they can get tiring too.
Yeah.
So, hey, what's a couple examples of a left memeing that is iconography like that?
Okay, so phrases.
Yeah.
The left's really good at phrases. So you take a phrase.
But wait a minute, you were talking about an image.
Well, an image or an idea, right?
Okay.
So it comes with an image. The phrase is gender affirming surgery,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Versus transgender surgery.
Yeah, that's true.
But once they kick that phrase, it does come with an image, right? All by itself, but it also comes with a positive spin, and then it just spreads.
Yeah.
And you show your credibility in the social order
Okay, well, if
by
that's
taking on these phrases and these ideas.
To me, that's bigger than memeing. That memeing gets caught up in that. Because
Yeah.
I would say before memes, how about this one? Pro-choice.
Yeah,
As utterly brilliant from a left perspective.
right.
Recasting the debate, who's not for choice,
Yeah.
right? And then the right's response was pro-death. We're pro-life and you're pro-death. And it just never really stuck.
Well, part of that too is when you control the institutions
I
that
know.
set the
yeah.
narrative,
Yeah, that's right.
you get to decide the phrasing, right?
Yeah.
But it is
Yeah.
true that the conservatives tend to be reactionary. They
Yeah.
tend to be saying, "Oh no, it's not that; it's this."
Oh, this is going to segue us into the word woke, but let's not do it yet.
Okay.
There's been a few, though, phrases that have been, okay, well,
And more recently,
yes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell one that I'm going to say I think was successful, but I did not like it from the very beginning. I didn't, because when the left does this, I think they're lying. They're
Right.
not being honest.
Right.
So here's what the right did. The Don't Say Gay bill,
right?
right, in Florida. They rebranded that as Don't Say Gay.
The left did.
The left did, and what did now? Oh man, it's escaping me. Sorry, backed away from the mic here. It's escaping me. They did. They rebranded it the right, and it was successful. Oh no! Here's what it was in response to that. It was grooming, the use
yeah.
of grooming.
So
this
don't
is
say
grooming.
groomer.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
grooming. It was the grooming law, anti-grooming law, and I read, The View got upset about it, and certain left, it hit home.
Anytime you see the View getting upset, you know
Yes.
you're doing it right.
But so like if there's 10 of those rebranding, conservatives get 2 and liberals get 8, right?
Right. Well,
But-
woke is that way too, and you'll even see the like winsome conservatives saying, "Don't say woke; it's like blah blah blah," and now they're trying
It
to.
has become that. Woke has gone the other, yeah.
well,
We'll
they're
talk
trying
about
to
woke in just a
say
second.
white people who say woke it's like the N word now, and it's like, oh my god.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hold on to woke because I want to talk about the woke in particular. But what I think is interesting about that, so the groomer one, for example, I didn't disagree that there is behavior that is grooming.
Yeah.
But to make that the word for a bill, the left wanted to call it Don't Say Gay, and they had some success with that
Yeah.
in their circles.
It got traction early.
It did, but it petered out also. The right had the anti-grooming bill, and they actually went further with that one, and they kind of won that one. But I still think it was dishonest. I don't like
How
it.
so? Because I think
Because-
it's exactly right.
No, I didn't think it. I didn't think when they were talking about what Disney can and can't do, I didn't think it was a grooming issue. It's not that grooming couldn't come out of those behaviors.
But the Don't Say Gay bill had nothing to do with Disney.
Yeah, it did. That's what.
No, it was about
thing.
schools.
Yeah, but it was about Disney. Also, it was also maybe it wasn't about Disney. Maybe it was just at the same time. It was
Yeah.
the curricula that you couldn't have promoting
Correct.
these lifestyles.
So here's why the groomer thing seemed perfect to me. Okay, for two reasons. One, as a public school educator, we got trained annually on grooming because it wasn't sufficient to say when someone has a credible accusation of child abuse, you take action. What we were alerted to is that you need to watch for sexual grooming of students, of kids, by teachers, by adults, by coaches, or by parents. And when you identify what grooming is, you start to see that, oh, it's not just the abuse. There's so many steps leading up to it. Okay.
Right.
So then when they said grooming, and I started looking, and I said, oh, like, what does a groomer do? They say, your parents don't understand you. Only I can understand you, right? They sexualize conversations with kids who don't understand it. They want to get into the personal lives of kids and say, who are you dating? They expose those kids to pornographic material. That's exactly what all of this curriculum is doing. They're now mandating that teachers act like groomers with these curricula. And the curriculum, and it used to be, and the parents fought in the 80s to get their kids taken out of sex ed. So what happened? They don't talk about gender ideology in sex ed. They talk about it under the guise of social emotional learning, anti-bullying curriculum. So now your parents don't know. It's not even in health class. I mean, it might be mentioned in health class, but it's going to be talked about.
So as a teacher, you had a greater sensitivity and probably larger context than I did.
Yes.
My first response was that it was successful. I was glad it was successful, but I felt it was deceitful. I thought it was political.
So here's the other side.
But I can acknowledge your point.
Yeah. The second thing is, I look up the definition of groomers, and there's two main ways that someone will get groomed. One is for sexual abuse. The other is to join a cult. And the gender ideology and cult parallels are crazy.
Yeah.
When you start looking into how possessed people get by these ideas.
Yeah. Well, some of this I think is, to put a capstone on it, is the whole thing when Jesus says, be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. That's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's easier to be one or the other. It's easier just to say, I'm going to be wise as a serpent and try to be a good guy, but I don't,
Right.
And there's arguments today, this is a little bit of Trump. You fight to win. Or Roger Stone, right? You play dirty even on the right, right?
Yeah, and that comes down to that question of, are we playing soccer or football?
Yeah.
Right. If you think you're showing up to a soccer match,
That's
and
right.
everybody, the other teams,
and
wearing
I can see
helmets
wisdom
and
in the statements, but I just can't go there. I think it's too one-sided.
Well, you
The
still
other
have to
one,
be innocent as dove. You
you
still
have to be
hold your
innocent as a
integrity.
dove. And it isn't even actually being harmless; it's being innocent.
Yeah.
That there is something in which you're not wanting to do wrong, and to be wise as a serpent, which strikes quickly from a hidden place, and yet you're innocent in that you have no malintent with what you're doing.
Right.
That's an incredibly. It's just easier to go one or the other, and I think one of the things when we do schedule and talk about Christian nationalism, I think one of your complaints is too much harmless as a dove in Christianity.
Yeah. Well, so let me give you an example. I made a post this week where talking about how if you're going to engage in spiritual warfare, you're going to get your hands dirty. Don't think you can do one without the other. And a friend of mine who's a pastor says, you're going to need to clarify that, right? Because you could easily read that to mean that you're going to permit sin, right? You're going to permit destruction of relationships or what we're talking about. But what I was trying to clarify with him was to engage in spiritual warfare, and if you're going to do it like the apostles did, you're going to publicly shame, the prophets of Baal, the politically corrupt, the religiously self-righteous, right? You're going to attack their ideas, even to the point of calling them foxes and broods of vipers and mocking their gods, right? You're going to do those things on a level that's going to engage in conflict that you're not going to get out of it unscathed. That people are going to attack your reputation. They're going to accuse you. They're going to say you went too far. All of that is part of war, right? And everybody has a plan until the shots are fired.
I've long thought that this winsome Christian idea was distortion. It was not healthy because it leads to this. The way I win you, if I'm a Christian, is I need you to like me and see me as your friend.
Yeah, friendly persuasion.
And that's not necessarily a wrong thing, to be kind and etc. But like you just said, when Elijah does that with the prophets of Baal, he is not winning their friendship.
Oh.
He's trying to be truthful in something, and he's actually provoking on purpose, which I think Jesus does too. He provokes on purpose because he needs a little bit of ouch.
Yeah.
When he talks to Nicodemus, and then in John 4, he talks to the woman at the well, he talks to them in John's account differently, completely different.
Right.
And he is willing to poke at Nicodemus to make him go, ouch, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And he's willing actually to hurt him in a sense, you could say, because, but it's not malice.
Correct. It's holding to a high standard.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're talking about when you say your hands are going to get dirty, in that it's messy and hard.
But I was thinking about this. There's a personality test called the DISC, and it's commonly used in 4 categories with 4 animals to represent personality kind of quadrants. The otter, the lion, the beaver, and the golden retriever. And the golden retriever is known for prioritizing people over things, right? Relationships over systems or accomplishments.
Yeah.
And slower paced over fast paced.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say 80 to 90% of pastors are that.
Or which one? Which
Are the golden retriever.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And it's almost like if you are that personality, then you would, if you weren't that personality, you wouldn't even consider ministry, right? But now there's this growing group
or be affirmed in it.
Of the lions, right?
Yes,
so the
that's
lions
true.
are, I'm more interested in accomplishments, I'm more interested in systems and objects, and I'm faster paced. It's the opposite side of these golden retrievers. And it's really
roaring, it hunts.
It's the Mark Driscolls, right?
Yes, that's right.
Versus the Matt
right.
Chandlers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think there's got to be a place for both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, I was thinking about this in terms of pain, because I was thinking recently about suffering and that we hate suffering, but our culture in particular hates it. The spirit of the age today, we do everything we can to avoid pain.
Yeah.
And I was even thinking fentanyl. Fentanyl is from the OxyContin family, right? It's a derivative.
It's a narcotic.
I know it's a narcotic, but I think it's a derivative, a step removed from the oxy stuff, which is more directly medicinal, which can be abused. And I believe, I should check this up. Somebody can correct me if it's wrong, but I think fentanyl is a step of processing down that line.
Right.
But it's still a pain reliever in a sense, right?
Yes.
It's not cocaine. You're not amped up. It's not pot. You're not spaced out enjoying music. It's a pain number.
Yeah. I heard someone say about heroin, which my understanding is fentanyl is like heroin times 10 or whatever.
Oh, okay. Well, heroin is on the OxyContin.
Well, heroin
thing
is,
too.
Someone described taking heroin as being hugged by God himself.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
It's the overwhelming sense of
so that
everything's
family
okay.
of drugs, that's the crisis we have today. And I don't think it's an accident. We hate pain.
Right.
And we do everything we can to mitigate and stop pain. And yet at the heartbeat of being
Which is
Christians, it is fear.
Running from pain is fear.
Yes,
right?
that's true. But there's a unique capacity in it today, I think. It's not just fear. I think it is our extravagant wealth. It is that we have the resources to minimize, and we've done that in ways that are not bad. Let's say take making a washing machine and a dryer.
Yeah.
The amount of hours and time spent rubbing clothes on a washboard to make those things was a good. It reduced pain and sorrow and made this whole process easier. That's not a bad thing. But it just continues to grow and grow and grow. And so I think we're not just fear-based avoidance of pain, but the spirit of the age for our nation, at least in the West, is pain is an evil to be avoided now. It's a sign of progress to do anything you can in compassion to minimize pain.
Well, to the very extent that you would kill your own child in abortion to avoid the pain of losing out on the career or the relationship.
Or that they would grow up with a single parent or whatever.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, they justify it
exactly
by the pain that the child might experience in life. Therefore,
this is going to get into the woke question. How are we on time?
We're right at an hour.
Yeah. All right, we're going to have to save the woke thing.
Well, so I want to say one more thing about the left memeing and the right's memeing.
Okay.
Okay. So what I think the left, or I would maybe say the liberals, have been better at historically is creating a utopian vision, a positive vision for what the future will be like if their ideology takes ascendance, right? Whereas, and the opposite of that is to react, to just say no to this, no to that. We want to do it the old way. So the positive vision of conservatism, and we went on and on about this several episodes ago, is in the past. The positive is back in the day, right? And in the liberal or leftist in its extreme mindset, the past is evil and this utopian future. And I equate it to like, if you're driving a car, you got the gas, the brake, and the steering wheel. Okay, the liberals have the steering wheel, and the conservatives are just on the brakes, saying we just got to slow down. We just got to slow down, but it doesn't change where you're going. And so,
Well, wait, where's the gas then?
well, the liberals are pushing the gas,
Okay.
but they're also steering. They got both.
Yeah.
Right. And so what conservatives have done, and this has been talked about for a long time, is that conservatives are just going slower to the same destination, right? They're just the brakes. And so if you're going to create a positive vision for the future from a Christian, from a godly perspective, you need to get the wheel. You need to say, no, it's better this other way. We need to turn and go somewhere else. And I think that's what, for its faults and its lacking of clarity at this stage, that's what Christian nationalism as an idea is starting to do.
I'm glad you said that, because I was just thinking through what qualifying phrases do I say attached to. We're going to have to talk about this more.
Yeah. No,
Because
I think for
I
next
find
time.
differences with some of what you're saying there, and I just think that's interesting. But I'll say this one comment. I think it's, because this is not so much adversarial as supportive, the idea that the left steers, in a sense, and is gas. I think that's a fair. They weren't always steering, but there always been gas. And I think there's a reason for that. For example, the left is more supportive of communism than the right, let's just say. And,
of
and the
course.
lefts that are believers, and we'll just say liberals, and they're going to run to Acts 2, they had all things in common. See, there's communism. Now, that's a different question, and we can talk about what that means. But here's the thing. Communism is not a wrong idea from a result perspective. It's just wrong in the enforced process that I have to force you to give to this other person. The Bible does actually say, if this other person is your sister, I want you to give freely what you have to her.
Right.
And so in one sense, I think what the left does from a Bible perspective is they articulate some of the Edenic visions, the paradise visions, because of their leftism. They do have an idealistic thing. I just think the problem as a conservative is the way they want to get there, I don't think it's the right way, right?
So the other side of it
But
too,
they're
though,
saying something that resonates.
no, that it does. But I think part of it is there's always a lie underneath. From every
It's a
utopian
distortion.
Every utopian vision is telling a lie. Okay, except for Jesus coming back and making all things new. Until that happens, everybody's picture of the utopia is fake. And the way that the leftist picture is fake is that it's not actually driven by compassion for making your neighbor, loving your neighbor, and helping them out when they're poor. It's driven by envy and a resentment for those who win.
Okay, I agree. But when they say, if I'm a leftist and I say everyone should be equal and have the same access to monies and they shouldn't have to do this, that does not sound bad.
No, it doesn't sound
Even,
bad. That's
even
the lie.
if there's envy underneath it,
Right.
or if there's a distorted pathway to get there underneath it, it still sounds good. And humanity as a whole, right or left, something echoes in our hearts of saying, that's the way it should be.
Yeah, but the lie is that it's based on that people who are wealthy, people who are successful, got there by cheating. And there are cheaters who are wealthy. There are people who inherited their wealth. But even inherited wealth, I think it's something like
I agree with you.
80% of millionaires in America are first generation wealth,
Yeah,
right? America has tried to create something called a meritocracy.
yeah.
That by your success, you become elitist, you become part of the elite because you can perform at an elite level. And so that's where like sports is a great example. There's no preference. If you run faster, catch the ball, go to the place.
In the past, there has been no preference.
Right. Yeah, but
It's changing.
it is. But that is the assault of the left is on the concept of merit.
Right. And when you say that, then I hear you saying the means then. When you bring in cheating and you bring in hard work right? Those are both means to an end.
Yeah, right.
But the end is still affirmed.
So here's the way I
And the
would
right
describe
doesn't
it.
talk that way as much.
So I was talking to kids on a track team. I said, imagine if at the end, every practice, every run that you go on in practice, and every race that you run, the whole team has to finish together at the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Said, would the team be slower or faster than they would have been otherwise? Slower.
Yeah.
Said, would any of the team members, from the slowest to the fastest, would any of them get as fast as they potentially could
No.
under that system? No, because even
Nobody's
the
pushed.
practices
Yeah.
would be the minimal, and the person who's
right.
in the back knows they're in the back, even though they're finishing
right.
equal, right?
And they feel tired and slow down. They know everyone will slow down with them.
So the idea that we need to get everybody to finish together, it doesn't just rob the winners from their victory. It also robs everyone
That's
of their
correct.
potential.
I completely agree with
Right.
you.
But maybe that's the means that you're talking about.
That's the means. I
But
think
I'm
that
saying,
is the means.
But what I'm saying is, if you look at it in terms of a positive competitive environment, which is what America's trying to create, right? A nation of immigrants, people who want to win, who want to make it, who want to try something, they come to America, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you create that positive competitive environment, you're going to get the best out of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a picture of a better world than to say, well, everybody gets the same amount.
Yes, I would say a better world under the fallen structures.
Yeah.
Because I still think, and I probably would differ from your earlier phrase about all idyllic things are not true until Jesus comes.
Well, I got that from The Princess Bride. That life is pain, and everyone who says different is selling something.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
I agree with that, but I think that we still have clues given to us by Jesus and in scriptures about what that idyllic life is going to be like. We don't have a full picture, but we have pieces.
Right.
And I think we can look at those pictures. And so, for example, everyone's a winner. That's when you try to implement that, if you try to implement that in an idyllic life right now, you're going to destroy everybody,
Right.
which is what's happening.
Yeah.
Even with that one, everyone's a winner. But when you think about heaven, I think there's a way in which that can be a true thing. Now, I don't know if we understand how that would work or what it would mean, but I think it's right to conceive of everyone being completely satisfied, working as hard as they're able to with the gifts and interests they have, being able to reap the rewards of all of that. There's no system against them. There's no futility in the earth growing up. And
But there's still a hierarchy in heaven,
I'm not disagreeing.
right? There's still people receiving more glory.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, and Edwards's thing around that point was this. He says, we're all cups in an ocean of God's love, and there are bigger cups and smaller cups,
Yeah.
but every cup is full. And he said, you enlarge your cup, and that's why it says, if do not lay up treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, but lay up treasures in heaven.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to advocate that when you do certain things that Jesus says, if you pray and don't tell anybody, if you give money, right? You have your reward if you go and talk about it.
Right.
That's your reward. But if
it.
you keep it and don't let your left hand know what your right hand, and you're generous, that you have a reward stored up for you in heaven that will be yours. And Edwards equated that to the size of you can make your cup your bigger, and that you hold more of the love of God. But if you make it by the skin of your teeth, so to speak, and the Corinthians of wood, straw, and stubble, and everything's burned up, but you're saved
flames.
so as through fire, you're still a cup, and you're full.
Okay.
And I thought that was a very clever way of saying that there's an equality and an inequality, but there is complete satisfaction. In fact, he even went further and said the small cups will look at the large cups and desire what they have, but not for themselves, but be happy that they have so much.
Yeah.
Because there's no envy.
Well, I could see that in the sense that, and I don't know where it speaks of this in the New Testament, that godliness with contentment is great gain.
Yeah.
And so we can create a vision of that kind of heaven on earth, but we don't do it with envy. We don't do it with force. We do it with genuine charity and contentment that what I have is if I have food and clothes, it's enough. Right?
Yeah, so that gets me, and we didn't make it to the woke thing, but we also didn't make it to just a little bit on suffering, because I end up thinking that the paradise on earth, the kingdom of God, is a giving up of the next life and dying.
Yeah.
And in that, so Jesus ends up, there's this phrase, right, where he says, for the joy set before him, he endures a cross, despising its shame.
Right.
And so that is not even extending beyond into what eternity is going to look like at that point. It's looking just right at this incident, but in expectation of what it will mean, he's able to look at this incident.
So what's
and
the
go
joy?
through it. The joy is what's going to be
Yeah.
forever.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's still not there yet.
Yep.
And so what that future thing that's undefined does for him is it enables him to enter into the cross in this moment and be okay with it.
Yeah.
I'll take this form of paradise. The real paradise is coming, but because I know it, I'll endure this one now and despise the shame. In fact, I'll look down on it. You can't kill me.
Right.
You'll take my life, but you cannot destroy me, and I'm content with that. But I get nothing. I'm still dying.
Well, how powerful is that in a culture who uses shame as their lever at every turn?
Yeah.
That we, in the fullness of bearing the cross he has for us, we get to look at their shame and say, it's nothing.
Yeah. Pain and shame, both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We've probably
good
reached
finish.
it is a good finish.
All right. If you're still with us, we appreciate you. And make sure to share this on the social platforms. Mike, are you on social media?
Nope.
Nice. Okay. So if you want to look for me on social media, it's Luke Zedwick everywhere you want to look. Basically, it's
There's
just Facebook
another
and Twitter.
contrasting opinion we'll talk about someday.
There you go. So come back next time. We're going to talk about the definition of wokeness
Yeah, that
and
would be a
Christian
good one.
nationalism and what
We
it
still
looks
want
like
to
to
talk
be
about the
persecuted.
artificial intelligence. Is only growing as an idea and topic.
I think
gotta
artificial intelligence is already running the world. But anyway, we could talk
We can
about that
talk
next
about
time
that
too.
too.
That'll be
think there's
3
some
episodes at least.
Very interesting things to say.
All right, we
Okay.
appreciate you guys. Share this with anybody who you think might be helped by it, and we'll see you next time.